Hallo, dieses Video mache ich heute in Englisch aufgrund seiner Brisanz sowie internationalen Relevanz. First of all, I really like the necessary discussion that all these videos brought up coming out of nowhere these days to comment the huge price changes of reserved list cards in Magic the Gathering, as the prices for Power 9, Dual Lands, Half Power, Commander Staples and so forth almost doubled overnight. One reason might be the gigantic buyouts on MagicCardMarket.de recently these days, but I'm sure that quite a bunch of these cards that everybody in the world wants to get their hands on are for sure also slumbering in the hands of true players and honest collectors all around the world. That's why the formats in which you can play them, called Vintage and Legacy, will never die, regardless of what you've heard. Because of that, the cards got so expensive now that almost no one can afford to buy a vintage deck today. The format seems to die out, simply because there are no players playing it, cause they cannot. Although why should a format die now that it's spoken dead since 1997 and which is having a long-term community of players on the finest and most professional deck building level? Why is there somebody trying to repair something that isn't broken? Legacy is played a lot all over the world, and Vintage is representative as well, as has been 20 years ago. If you compare collecting MTG cards to collecting historic cards, if you want to buy, for example, an MGA from 1959 with all original parts and paints and so forth, and you want to do it today, even if it's out of production since almost 60 years, this gets really expensive naturally. But as a collector, and when you want to make yourself a live stream come true, you will eventually do that, no matter if that's a huge amount of money. If you, on the other hand, just need a car to drive, you're eventually better off with like a VW Polo or your old mountain bike or whatever is cheap and gets the job done. As an MTG collector, keeping the strongest cards like Power 9 for a very long time, as 25 years or something, is a personal achievement and also something that makes a collector proud, as lifeblood is connected with the cards. If you aren't willing to spend 1/3 of your money ever earned in your life for MTG, you don't need to. Just play the standard format like the 80% of the Magic player community does, or try formats like Pauper, or possibly start playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, where you can build functional complete decks for as low as $7. But constantly telling all people since 1997 that the greatest Magic collectors in the world will be worthless tomorrow just makes honest collectors angry, and that's it. If you are a private collector and not interested in selling everything when the price rises a bit overnight, then you'll never ever give away your collection as long as you live, simply because you wanted these cards decks so much that you either way brought them some years ago or even kept and protected them for over 20 years, even if there had been so many people who wanted to buy them away from you. Any of your private collections over these years should be rewarded instead of crashed, that's my opinion. Well, that's also true that buyouts for economical aspects are bad, no doubt, as they are screwing private persons who just want to play their decks, but when you're not selling more than 8 copies per card, counting the English card name, to the same buyer, this should get fixed. The argument that people have to say that they can never afford to pay these high prices for Power 9 and reserved list cards, to my mind just includes that they never wanted to have them anyway. If they all scream and argue that the prices rose overnight, as they sometimes temporarily might do, why don't they just buy them yesterday when they were cheaper? If you are a collector for years, you should either did try to get the cards you like nearly sooner or simply gotten your hands on them at last yesterday so that you own them today, and that's the best way to get around price spikes. If you don't want to buy a card for the last 25 years, even if it existed since the early days of Magic, why are you mad at the ones who did buy them on time? Better be mad at yourself then, because you missed the chance to get them cheaper as they are today. So if you still don't own them today, please don't blame honest collectors for that. The other argument that Wizard isn't interested in the secondary market is not really true, because making so many people talking about the game in so many countries every day is the best advertisement they could ever get, right? Also, there are so many new players joining and enjoying the game even at this very moment, and because getting new sets is cheaper and unproblematic, new displays and booster packs will get bought anyway. It's yet again still the same as with historic cars. Almost everybody drives either a car that's functionable or the one that they can afford. But when you see somebody driving an expensive or historic car, it immediately catches your eye. That's why I'd say that the versatility of what aspect you get out of the game, the community and the background of MTG is very important, as everybody deserves his or her individual position there, so therefore there should be events in the future where the great old cards will be allowed to be played for all time, simply to let the formats exist and bring great joy to those who love them so much. Because that's what it makes collectors proud and the MTG collectible card game so versatile.